And when I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
And if we're talking tight ends and we're going into round 2, maybe round 3, give me Ian Thomas, please. Let's just do the damn thing.
Just based on giving his overall ability. Again, I like his arm. I think he can make every throw.
The pick at number 12 is in.
And we're back. Cover 1, the NFL Draft Podcast. I'm Russell Brown. Joining me, as always, CP, Christian Page. How we doing, my man?
Doing well. Happy weekend.
Yeah, happy Saturday. Last night, you were or was it last night or the night before? Either way, you were doing the premium Slack channel, answering draft questions.
Yeah, last night I was chilling at the Auburn softball game, and it was a tournament. So in between games, they have that 30 to 45-minute layover period. So I was like, let's get all the questions in. So, yeah, I was answering some really – we got some really smart people in that Slack channel. I mean, not that, some NFL draft fans aren't intellectual, but, I mean, just talking about, certain scheme fits for certain teams, who your top 5 offensive guard rankings. That's what I got last night. I'm like, man, I'm going to have to think about this. But it was really fun, really good questions on Twitter. And, of course, when you subscribe to Cover One, you can get all access to the Slack channel, talking about draft, talking about, maybe the Buffalo Bills or just general football questions. So definitely something you need to hit up.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there were tons of questions in there, tons of great stuff just going on in there. And I was very intrigued. I really like the idea. Maybe that's something we start doing a little bit more frequently, especially with all of the people that we have now on the Cover One crew, from Zach Hicks, Brad Kelly, Eric Turner, myself, and you, and even Greg. So, and don't forget about Aaron Quinn. But if you guys want to be a part of that Slack channel, you have to become a premium subscriber to Cover One. And it's not like it's that much money. If you can afford $10, you're in. So go ahead to cover1.net, go to the premium content plans, take a look at what we have available. You will love the deals. $10 to cover you for the entire year really does not sound that bad for the amount of content that we get or that we give you. So you can join the Slack channel. You can join the certain tiers. You can get in there. You can ask us questions. We will get back to you. We will show you film. We will break it down for you. Tons of great stuff always on the Slack channel for Cover One and all of the premium content. So go to cover1.net, become a premium subscriber today. So we're doing a Saturday morning show, basically a Saturday morning mock draft, finishing up where we left off last week. Last week we did picks 1 through 16, and now we're going to do 17 through 32. About 2 weeks ago, CP and I put out our first mock drafts of the year. So if you guys haven't checked those out yet, you can simply go to cover1.net, hit the tab for NFL Draft, and it'll be one of the very first things that you see. So get in there, take a look at what we have floating around. You'll really like some of the picks, and maybe you won't. You probably won't, because most people hate mock drafts. So bash us on why we picked the wrong guy for your team. One guy tried telling me that there's no shot Van Jefferson gets in the first round. And while I probably agree, it's the draft. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But let's start at 17. Let's start with the Dallas Cowboys. You have we both have them taking a safety. You have one safety. I have the other safety. You have Xavier McKinney, Alabama safety, 6'1", 200. What do you like about McKinney, and why do you like this fit?
Yeah, I just like his versatility. I mean, he lined up at multiple positions, kind of served as that extra linebacker in the box at times. Of course, primarily a safety. I think he's versatile. I think he can play free. I think he can, come down in the box and play in that strong safety role as well. He's really solid in man-on-man coverage. He's very trustworthy with his instincts and zone as well. And I think, you line him up in a slot situation or just against a wide receiver covering a running back out of the backfield, you don't have any breach of coverage as far as compared to the other players in the defensive secondary. So I think McKinney, I think he's a fit for Dallas because, frankly, Dallas needs some help in the secondary. And I know the player you went with a safety as well as Grant Delpit. He had some versatility and just some reliability as well. I think McKinney overall is a cleaner player. I think he's a more consistent tackler.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as coverage goes, I trust his instincts a little more. Delpit's fine in that regard, but I think McKinney just plays more cornerback-like coverage skills as compared to Delpit. But I think either way, Dallas needs to address the secondary early in this draft, whether it is round one here, getting one of the top safeties, because this safety class is not very deep. I was talking in the Slack channel we were just talking about last night and saying I only see maybe 3 to 5 starters as a whole in this safety class. I mean, these are 2 of them, but there's not many, so I think Dallas should take advantage of them in round one.
Yeah, they certainly should. And I mean, the other, maybe 2 to 3 safeties that we're thinking of, Ashton Davis out of California, and Antoine Winfield Jr. out of Minnesota. Other than that, I mean, I don't know I'm with you. I don't know exactly what safety you're going to go out and grab. Again, defensive backs are one of the last groups I really pay attention to, but I try to pay attention to, the top 5 or 6 guys at the position just to get an understanding for the first, 2, maybe 3 rounds of the draft. So I like McKinney. I'm with you. He's more of a consistent tackler. It's weird. Grant Delpit, and that's who I have the Cowboys taking, Grant Delpit out of LSU. I like Delpit a lot. He's got really good range. He's got ball skills, and he's versatile, I think. I mean, and he could play as a single high safety. He is a guy that you can put in the slot as well. But he does have some tackling woes. And, I mean, there's times that he comes downhill and he makes some really impressive tackles, and then there's times where he's almost like he'll be scraping over the top, and he looks foolish. So I think I like the way you described it. I really like the McKinney fit with that range, and I think it's something maybe I'll probably hinder back and forth on. And with McKinney, Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch, and if they somehow, some way pay Byron Jones, that's a pretty good core of defensive players with some range, some versatility, and just athletic ability. So I really like that fit. Miami at 18, they have this draft pick because of the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade, where they sent Minkah to the Steelers. So the Steelers gave up the 18th pick of the draft. You've got Christian Fulton, cornerback out of LSU. I've got Mekhi Becton, offensive tackle out of Louisville. I'll start. You had Becton go to the Broncos in your mock draft, but we talked about him last week, but we'll talk a little bit more about Becton here. Again, 6'7", 365, 370 pounds. He's just a massive human. And after watching 5 games, I mean, I really like his skill set. It was like maybe going into it, I overthought a little bit of his performance against Notre Dame. And then, I watched him against Virginia and he got better. I watched him against Kentucky and he got better. And it was like other games he looked really well. And I think just the thing with Notre Dame was he was dealing with Khalid Kareem, Julian Okwara, and those are guys that have pretty good length. So, and it wasn't like it was a bad game. He still played very well in that game, and he's just so big. And, he might struggle a little bit against speed guys, those speed rushers off the edge. But if that guy can't turn the corner and get to the quarterback, he really has no shot. And if you're in pretty much in Becton's range, you're probably going to die. You're probably going to lose. So, I mean, he's that good. I think he can come in, and I think this is an ideal spot for him. I think in that, 15 to 25 range, 18 to Miami makes a lot of sense. No more Laramie Tunzel. So I like Becton. For you, like I said, you have Christian Fulton going here. He's my top-ranked corner still right now. But what do you like about Fulton, and why would he be the guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about with Minkah Fitzpatrick, it's naturally just to use that selection and go with a cornerback or another piece in the secondary. Fulton does not have that versatility that Fitzpatrick has. You're talking about, or we were just talking about how McKinney is kind of uses that chess piece in the secondary. That's pretty much what Fitzpatrick was for Miami and Alabama, of course. But Fulton's more of that true island corner. I think he's more of a technician than Jeff Okudah, who's going to be the top cornerback selected in this class. Maybe doesn't have that spunk or that flashy ability like Okudah does. But I think he's more calm. He's more consistent in his coverage ability. I think he's more technically sound and just overall a smarter player. So I agree with you. I think he's the top cornerback in this class. But just based on projection-wise, I think he falls in that, late teen range like he is at 18 at Miami here. But I think, you tag team him with Xavier Howard, who has a big contract now with Miami, assuming he comes back to full strength. Those are really 2 solid guys in that secondary that I think can kind of solidify that Miami defensive side that we saw, week by week in that second half of the season, Miami has a lot of potential. And I know I use it very lightly because we've said that with Miami because they've had a loaded roster, or loaded in quotations, in years past, and they just haven't really amounted to success going forward. But you saw Coach Flo and how they could progress from week to week, and I think this is just another solid piece on that defense to take that next step forward.
Can't really disagree. I mean, and I think they could go in a variety of ways in the first round. I don't think they're going to end up having 3 first-round picks. I think it's going to be 2, and I think it'll probably be 18 and 3, maybe 5. I doubt they stay at 5. I think they're going to be the team that trades with Detroit. I'll probably say that unless something else happens, but that just seems like the perfect match for some type of trade. So we've got the Raiders at 19. You've got them going Kenneth Murray, linebacker out of Oklahoma. They had previously been on the board. Remember, the Raiders have 2 picks. They've got 12 and they've got 19. At 12, you had Derek Brown go to them, and he fell right into their lap. Here, you've got them going Kenneth Murray, linebacker out of Oklahoma. 2 defensive players for the Raiders. I really like the mindset here of going defense. They need help at, I think, both positions, so I can't disagree. But why Kenneth Murray, and is he – outside of Isaiah Simmons, the best linebacker?
Yeah, I think he is. He shows a lot of sideline-to-sideline speed ability. He's a really smart player, and even though he may not be able to, get his hat on the football every single time that he recognizes the play, he kind of flows to that side of the ball, so it gives an indication to his defenders, to the other personnel, to make a play on there. But I really like his vision in between the tacklers, especially on early downs. He's not a liability as far as zone coverage goes. Man, you didn't really see him line too much up in man coverage, obviously, given his position. But I think Kenneth Murray adds – he's probably the best linebacker on the team when he's selected here. Oddly enough, and I wrote about it in the mock draft, Oakland's rush defense wasn't that bad last year, but when you look at their personnel, not necessarily their defensive line, but when you look at their linebacker personnel, it's like how were they consistent in that regard? You had some splash plays from Will Compton, who came over from Tennessee, but if that's your go-to linebacker, then you need a lot of help in that regard. So I think Kenneth Murray adds, instant ability to plug and play, and I think just intellectually, I think he would be just fine at the next level. So I think Las Vegas really needs to beef up that front 7. I think they could go forward there with Brown and Murray.
It's going to be so hard to say Las Vegas. It's just going to take forever to get used to.
I hesitated for just a second, but yeah, it is tough.
Yeah, it's Oakland is just so natural, but I like it. I like pairing Murray with Tierra Whitehead. That's an athletic duo of linebackers, and like you mentioned, Will Compton. Really, what's the status with him moving forward? So we'll see. But I have them going defense, just not linebacker. I guess you could play him there, and that's Xavier McKinney. We just talked about him, safety for Alabama, and I know Raiders fans are going to go, well, they just drafted Jonathan Abram. They're not going to follow up with another safety. Well, if you look at their safety group, Jonathan Abram played 1 game. You don't really know what he has. You don't know what he really brings to the table. Is he the same player? You don't know. And outside of that, they've got LaMarcus Joyner and Eric Harris. No offense, folks. I don't know if they're going to spend money on a safety when they're being rumored to spend $30 million per year for Tom Brady at this point. I don't know what kind of money they're going to have. But either way, McKinney's a huge upgrade over Joyner and Harris. We talk about his versatility. I think plugging him up in the box with Abram at times, or just having him drop and be that single high safety while Abram's up covering the slot or in that box role. I think no matter how you view it, McKinney is an upgrade over what they have, and I think it's a terrific fit. So they would have 2 solid safeties that can tackle. They're versatile, and I think that would help on the back end with this defense. So that would be the Raiders. I have them going CeeDee Lamb and Xavier McKinney. You've got Derek Brown and Kenneth Murray. Both picks, both selections that we have for both teams, I think is ideal. So if you have a problem with that, Raiders Nation, I don't care. And I only say that because they were, I don't know. I had a comment on Twitter and it was very annoying by them. The Jaguars are on the clock at 20. They have this pick because they traded Jalen Ramsey to the Rams for a first-round pick. We both are thinking, well, actually, we're not thinking the same thing. You've got a defensive back. I've got a receiver. I've got wide receiver T. Higgins out of Clemson. I like the thought of them going after a wide receiver. And I think in the previous pick, you had them take a receiver, if I remember correctly. I'm going up. Yeah, you had them take Jerry Jeudy. So, we're kind of in the same boat. I had Jeff Okudah go to them. I'm going receiver here. So we've got the same mindset, but I'm going T. Higgins here, 6'4", 210 receiver. I think Gardner Minshew is going to be their quarterback moving forward. I think Nick Foles is probably done. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think Minshew's their guy. And with DJ Chark, the way he's developed, I think Higgins would be a great fit alongside him. You get a guy with great body control, can help in the red zone, help in jump ball situations. And it seems like when Higgins can make a big play, he'll make a big play, a big catch. So with that catch radius, I think it's huge help. So I really like the fit for Higgins to the Jaguars. You've got cornerback from Florida, CJ Henderson. What do you like about Henderson? What does he bring for the Jaguars?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about, Jalen Ramsey, the gaping hole that left, so they need to solidify that side of the secondary. But with Henderson, sure, he's not a completely squeaky clean prospect. I think he struggles a little bit as far as tackling goes, but he showed a little bit of improvement from week one to the final week for Florida. So I think he kind of adds some versatility to that secondary. I think he adds some, kind of some passion, some, gritty attitude that Jacksonville may need in that secondary. His overall coverage skills, I think, are fine. I don't think you really see too many plays where you're like, oh, my gosh, he can't play in the league or he can't start in this role. So I think his upside is there. I think his floor, for the most part, his floor is pretty high. I don't think I really see him, struggling to make a second contract. So I think Henderson, sure, it may be a little rich for the first round, but I think there's a lot of buzz that he is going to be one of the top corners selected in this class. So I think, with Jacksonville, like you said, whether going wide receiver or defensive back in this first round, I think they could probably just have best player available fall in their lap as well. Maybe just depending on that first pick. But, if AJ Epineza is available or a guy like you're talking about T. Higgins or Laviska Shenault, who are two guys that are probably high on a lot of people's boards, I think Jacksonville may get very fortunate at pick 20 to have one of the top players fall in their lap. So they could address, a need here. I don't think it's necessarily a big reach for Henderson, but it may be on their board according where everything lines up. But I think they could go, cornerback here. Maybe Jeff Gladney from TCU is an option too. I think he's gaining a lot of buzz. But there's definitely a lot of opportunity here for Jacksonville at 20.
Moving forward, 21, Philadelphia Eagles, 9-7 football team last year. It just seems like they're so close to maybe being that, that playoff team that had that run a few years ago, but yet they still seem so far away. And the two biggest needs for them, it just feels like secondary, maybe a linebacker, and then a wide receiver. And you've got them going wide receiver, T. Higgins. I just talked about him, I know, but why do you just think he's a fit there? And I mean, I really like it. I think with him and Alshon and maybe Deshaun Jackson, I know he's kind of up in the air, but you have that with some hopeful development of our Arcega-Whiteside. If they can do that, I mean, I think this is a really good pick. But why T. Higgins?
I mean, they need an alpha dog receiver. I mean, every receiver it seems like that Carson Wentz has dealt with has either been, on year or his third contract or injury bug, like you talked about, with Alshon Jeffrey, who's constantly on the injured report. Deshaun Jackson, who lives and breathes on the IR. He wouldn't know how to function without it. Nelson Aguilar, who doesn't seem like he can catch the ball or if he even wants to catch the ball. And like you said, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, I think his upside may just be wide receiver 3, which is fine. But I think he's limited as far as maybe just versatility and just some of his overall body mechanics. I don't think he can really accentuate his skill to a wide receiver number 1 player. So Higgins can bring that. And it makes me a little nervous because he was injured in those playoff games. So hopefully that doesn't carry over to Philadelphia because that would just be deja vu for them. But I think if you give Wentz – and I mean, Wentz has to stay healthy too. I'm not blaming this all on the wide receivers. But if Wentz can stay healthy, I think going forward with – a true alpha dog wide receiver number 1, 6'4", 210, can play a versatile role, can win over the middle, can win underneath, and of course can beat you vertically. But bringing that, possession receiver, that red zone threat, that's exactly what T. Higgins brings to Philadelphia. They need some healthy. I mean, they should grab 2 wide receivers in this class. And I have no allegiance to Philadelphia whatsoever, but just for, seeing what Doug Peterson can do, seeing what Carson Wentz can do with a healthy wide receiving core, they need to take advantage of this really deep wide receiver class. And I think that should start in round 1.
I can't disagree. I mean, I think with how deep this wide receiver group is, I mean, I like the thought of them maybe going, receiver on day 3, but also in the second round. So, maybe 1 and 2, like in the second and fifth round or something like that. And I don't know what production you get out of a 5th round receiver. Probably not that much, but maybe you find a diamond in the rough. But I like the thought of them going defense here. I was really on the fence. Do I go linebacker? Do I go corner? I ultimately went with the best player on my board, and that was Christian Fulton, who is my CB1 still. I like Jeff Okudah a lot. I know he's got a much higher ceiling, but I think those two are much closer as prospects. I've talked about this before than people actually give credit for. So Fulton, I like his patience. I really like him in man coverage. I think he does a good job recognizing where he needs to be in zone coverage. So I think this is an ideal fit for him in Philadelphia. I think he could develop very well in this defense with Jim Schwartz as the defensive coordinator. And I think it's just an ideal landing spot for Christian Fulton. So at 22, we've got the Buffalo Bills, and we both have them going on the other side of the football. We both have one going offense, one going defense. I've got them going defense, and that's Yetur Gross-Matos from Penn State. I like YGM quite a bit. I like his length at 6'5", 265. He's got a little blend of speed to power to his game, an explosive get-off when he wants to. And I think he got a little bit more consistent in the run game as the season went on. He got a little bit better as the season went on. But overall, I just like this fit. Jerry Hughes, I've said it in the mock draft, he can't play forever. Trent Murphy could be a cap casualty because he's due close to $8 or $9 million. And if they let him go, they would only take a dead cap hit of about like $1.5 million. So it's pretty cheap to let Trent Murphy go. You bring in a young edge rusher. If you keep Shaq Lawson, I have no idea. But this could be kind of your replacement for Shaq Lawson. And maybe you keep Murphy for one more year as his contract expires at the end of the season. So regardless, they've got to prepare to pay guys like Deion Dawkins, Trey White, Josh Allen, so on and so forth. So if that's what they're going to do, I think YGM on the defensive side of the football, you get 5 years out of them, and maybe you develop a guy that fits into your defense. So I like the Bills with Yetur Gross-Matos. You've got Laviska Shenault, wide receiver out of Colorado for the Bills. I love the fit there as well. Explain a little bit about Shenault, what he brings for Bills.
Yeah, I think he brings a ton of versatility. And I wrote about in the article talking about how Buffalo, they saw some success from their wide receiver core last year. They didn't really have that number one primary guy that Josh Allen could look for, but John Brown, took a big step forward last year. I mean, he was outstanding given what his expectation was. And you saw glimpses from Cole Beasley and among some others. So I think Shenault, though, brings a little more versatility. He's kind of that, and I feel like I overuse this because I think it's more of a unique quality and I need to quit, but Shenault could be more of that chess piece in the wide receiving core because he brings so much versatility. I think he can win on the outside. He can especially win behind the line of scrimmage. Just give him the ball and let him go to work. And I think with some of the pressure situations that Josh Allen faces, and sometimes, I mean, let's be honest, he freaks out a little bit under pressure, and he needs some of that security blanket. I don't know if he necessarily has that. I mean, John Brown's more of that vertical threat on the outside and maybe not always close to the line of scrimmage for Allen to dump the ball off to. I think Shenault could definitely be that safety blanket that Buffalo definitely needs. And I think with all that general manager Brandon Beane's done in the past, I think this would be the right decision to go forward because you got to protect your quarterback. You have to find him plenty of options to take that next step forward because, it's even though, I guess it's entering year 3 now, it's Josh Allen evaluation time. Not saying it hasn't started, but they're going to have to start think long term now. And I think when you can bring in multiple pieces that help him, make that step forward to get the best evaluation possible with the pieces around him, I think Shenault makes the most sense here. But with Cover One exclusively covering Buffalo from the NFL side of things, it's either pass rusher or wide receiver. They're both in your ear. So we answered both questions here. And I don't think there's a wrong situation to go in.
Yep, I said it last year too. I thought they should have gone after DK Metcalf when they had the chance. I thought he would have been a great fit there as their top receiver with John Brown and Cole Beasley complementing him very well. But a team that we just never know what the hell they're doing.
Yep.
23 New England Patriots. We both go opposite sides of the football here. You go defensive end, Marlon Davidson out of Auburn. I like the fit. I know people, I know the draft buzz around Davidson's starting to climb a little bit. You've been high on him since the very beginning of the year. What does he bring to the table for the Patriots, and why do they go defense here?
Brings a lot of versatility, and he's one of those nice combinations of he's not this upper echelon pass rusher, but he's a stud run defender. He doesn't maybe have all the flexibility or the athleticism in the world as opposed to some of these other edge guys, but I don't think you can really consider Marlon Davidson in that edge category. He's more of that true defensive lineman. He shows versatility. He lines up at anywhere from a 7-5 technique wise in Kevin Steele's defense, but then on third down situations they move him inside to that 3-4 technique, and then he can rush the passer from the interior. So Davidson, he's a really smart guy. I've had a few interviews with him, and he'll win the interview room, no question about it. I think you can throw anything at him. He was a leader for Auburn, so I think it makes a lot of sense. He kind of has that Patriots mold to him. If we really can even put our finger on that, like you said, we never really know, who they're going to take in that back end. But Davidson, from a need and just, I think, a versatility perspective on that defensive line unit, he brings a lot to the table, and I think he makes a lot of sense for Patriots here.
Like I said, I have no idea what direction they're going to go. And I mean, I can't disagree with what you're saying, but again, we have no idea. I mean, we don't have any idea about any of these teams, but the Patriots are always a toss up. And I mean, I don't think Tom Brady's leaving, but maybe he ends up leaving, and then quarterback obviously becomes the need. But if he's not leaving, I like the thought of them going back to what they did a few years ago by drafting Isaiah Wynn, a few years before that drafting Nate Solder. They tend to – it just seems that they tend to go after some offensive linemen, and some offensive linemen that, one, are athletic and possess some versatility. And I know Josh Jones might not be versatile from a snap count perspective, primarily playing left tackle, but Josh Jones, offensive tackle from Houston, I think he's athletic. I think he'd be a fit in New England. I think he would be a good fit at left tackle. You could potentially replace Joe Thuney, who is destined for free agency. They're probably not going to pay him and Tom Brady. So they're going to move on from the left guard, replace the left guard with Isaiah Wynn, and bring in Josh Jones and act like nothing even happened. That's my perspective. Now, I really like the length. I think he moves pretty well in space for his size. I think he could get his footwork a little bit cleaner and more so controlling his base a little bit from time to time. But overall, Josh Jones looks like I don't want to say a sure first rounder. I think he's more of like that borderline first round grade, but overall, he's probably going to be a first round pick because of the potential and what you can do and develop him. And if you have a good offensive line group and just a good coaching staff, which the Patriots always do, I think that you can develop a guy like Josh Jones. So that's the direction I go for the New England Patriots here at 23. 24, the New Orleans Saints. Not going to get any disagreement out of either one of us here. Jordan Love, we both really like the fit for him. I think he's an ideal fit for Sean Payton in that offense. We don't know if Drew Brees is coming back or not. And if he does, either way, I think they need to start thinking of ways to replace him. And it's not Taysom Hill, folks. I can tell you that. Not a 30-year-old gunslinger. But either way, I think Jordan Love is a guy that is, like I said, a perfect fit for Sean Payton and this Saints offense. I think they're actually going to move up and try to get him somewhere in the teens of this draft, probably like maybe 12, 13 in that range. Try to get in front of the Colts to get Jordan Love. I know you picked Jordan Love. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Not really. I'm with you. I think we need to, regardless of, if it is Breeze's last time around, but they need to start looking there. And real quickly, and it might be kind of a poor man's comparison, or not poor man's comparison, but a bad comparison. But we were just talking about Josh Allen with Wyoming and talking about, maybe some of his inconsistencies he had, but based on some of the personnel around him. But you put Jordan Love He has a lot of those physical abilities. You put him in a healthy, really healthy rushing game, a solid offensive line, and, of course, maybe the best wide receiver in football, Michael Thomas. I think his potential shines. It was Sean Payton in New Orleans. But there may be a pipe dream right now. It may not happen until 2 or 3 years down the road, or, heck, it may happen this season. Who knows? But I think Jordan Love would actually be a fit and just a need filled here for New Orleans.
Absolutely. A guy with such good, really good anticipation, just a great release. You could watch him throw football all day long. But 25 Minnesota Vikings. We both go defensive side of the football. I go with my guy, Neville Gallimore, defensive tackle out of Oklahoma. Gallimore's a guy that, came into the Senior Bowl 6'2", 307, real good size. I mean, a little bit undersized for an interior defensive lineman, but I think he's a guy that could maybe be, I know I'm going two different sides of the comparison here, but maybe a high ceiling of, becoming a guy like Kenny Clark for the Green Bay Packers, or maybe he's just like a Malcolm Brown when he came out of Texas and went to the Patriots and actually played pretty well for them. Now he's in New Orleans playing for the Saints, but Gallimore's a guy that would help the Vikings with their interior defensive line. They've been looking for more of a 3 technique. Gallimore has tons of versatility. He played all over that defensive line. You've got Everson Griffin there. You've got, Hunter. You've got so much talent on that defensive front. I think you add a guy like Gallimore into the middle, and I think it makes you a better football team. You've got Trevon Diggs, corner out of Alabama. I really like this fit. I also like the idea of maybe a Jeff Gladney here, but I'll let you elaborate on Diggs and what you think here.
This is more of I fell victim to projection as opposed to what I think they should do. Because I'm with you. I think Gladney would be a better option here. I think overall on my board, Gladney will be ranked higher. And maybe a couple other guys. Diggs shows a lot of inconsistency in just one-on-one coverage. But overall, he's long. He's 6'2". He's physical and can run. And that seems like the bread and butter for Mike Zimmer's defense in Minnesota. We've seen it with a little bit of Trey Waynes, maybe not as physical, but pretty smooth overall. He's long and he's fast. We saw it with Xavier Rhodes earlier in his career. He tailed off this year, so they may have to be making a decision on him come here soon. But Diggs into, the connection between Stephon Diggs and Trayvon Diggs. It makes too much sense for Minnesota not to do it. So, I mean, maybe it's just a little bit of a reach here, and I'm with you. I think Gladney could be an option, maybe some other guys, but I think Diggs, just based on a need perspective and maybe a value perspective on the board, depending on how Minnesota lines it up, that's their pick here at 25.
I was definitely going to say you did this because Stephon Diggs is on the team.
Man, it's hard. I tried to go in with it with an unbiased mind, but it got me. But it made sense, too. I could make more sense about it. So
yeah, I
made my 3 points, and then I brought in Stephon. So
You're good. I believe you. Either way, let's move to 26, the Miami Dolphins. I personally don't think that they're going to have this pick by the time we get to April, but we'll see. We both have them going on the defensive side of the football. We both have them going edge rusher. I've got Julian Okwara, edge rusher out of Notre Dame, 6'4", 250. They moved on from Robert Quinn last offseason. They drafted Charles Harris a few years back, but he's just not developing into the player that they thought. So I think that they need to dig back into the edge rusher pool here and see what they can find. And I think Okwara is a guy that Brian Flores would develop very well. I know he runs more of like a multiple defensive front, primarily a 3-4 type of front, but either way, I think Okwara standing up, he's got experience doing that. I think he's a little bit more explosive standing up. So with his length, and again, one of those guys that needs to develop a counter rush, do some more inside pass rush moves, but overall long arms. And I think he's a guy that will create plenty of separation and play very well and be a solid edge rusher. I don't think he'll be a 15 to 20 sack guy. And maybe that's a little much for especially a guy that's getting drafted 26th overall, but it can happen. But I think he's more of your 6 to 10 sack guy, a consistent player every single season. And if he can stay healthy, I think it's a fine pick. But you've got them going A.J. Epinesa, edge rusher out of Iowa. He falls here in your scenario. I have him going 14th to the Buccaneers. But why does Epinesa fall? And ultimately, is this just best player available for the Dolphins?
Yeah, I think it is, but it also, like you said, they need to youth up their defensive front. And I think if you're looking for more of that 3-4 versatile defensive lineman, Epeneza's your guy. You talked about Aguara struggling with some of the counter moves and inside moves. Epineza has all of that. And I'm not saying you don't think he does, because you had him already off the board in the early teens as well. But I don't know. I just get a vibe that Epineza may not be this, and this could totally change after the combine here in a few weeks, but he may not be that athletically gifted guy that goes in those first wave of pass rushers. Because I mean, of course, everybody could use, some sort of pass rushing element, because you could definitely see New England taking Epineza here, because everything I said about Davidson fits the same mold as Epineza, but he brings more pass rushing elements to the table. But with a guy, that's kind of been the flashy guy, or that is probably going to blow up the combine with Kayvon Chason, I think he may have a little more, highlight reel type plays that may pave way for him to be, more of an attractive piece in those upper elements of the pass rushing teams that obviously need a defensive end. But with Epineza, he brings too much to the table. Again, like you said, best player available, falls right here in Miami's lap. And my haul of Miami would be Tua Tagovailoa with their first pick, Christian Fulton with their second pick at corner, then AJ Epineza. So if they could somehow, like you said, they probably don't keep all those picks, but if they could somehow bring in that haul, I mean, wow, you talk about the potential. They can execute that potential with those three guys.
Oh, yeah, the future is bright. I mean, that's why they keep their shades on when they walk in the room, because their future is bright. I'll stop recording.
We're
now.
almost done.
So we'll go to 27, Seattle. Two guys we haven't spoke about yet. Seattle, you've got them going wide receiver, TCU, Jalen Reagor. I like this fit, actually. I mean, I don't know if they necessarily go to wide receiver in this position. We don't really know. And Seattle's also one of those teams that's always a wild card. They could trade back. They could take another running back. They could move up in the draft. You never know.
Please don't take another running back.
You never know.
Which they could. They have their the stab at the number one rusher here, so that could make some sense.
Jonathan Taylor would be a fine fit there if they feel like Chris Carson's hip is too bad. But Jalen Reagor here, I like it. I mean, he'd be a compliment. And I'm sorry, I'm taking your answer. Why do you like him here with Lockett and Metcalf already on this team?
Yeah, I think he's just another compliment piece to them. And it seems like Seattle, that wide receiver 3 on their unit seems to still be a major impactful guy. And I think when you have the consistency of Reagor to, exploit the deep parts of the field, if he can catch the ball a little more consistently over the course of the season. But if he's that wide receiver 3, I think linking him with, that bigger physical vertical threat like DK Metcalf, who's evolved a little bit more as a route runner over the middle of the field. Tyler Lockett, who's kind of a jack of all trades, and I don't mean that for any disrespect whatsoever, but Reagor can kind of, fit in between all of that. I think he kind of brings a little bit of all those other elements there. I think he could be a threat in the red zone too. But like you said, with Seattle, New England, they're two teams, especially Seattle recently, I did not expect them taking LJ Collier last year or Rashad Penny 2 years ago. It was just very awkward to see, but maybe this one might be a little different because they don't necessarily need a wide receiver, at least not this early in the draft. So maybe it kind of catches them off guard, but you can make a little more sense about it as opposed to maybe some of their recent first round picks.
If you are a Seahawks fan and you want to know more about Jalen Reagor, I mean, you did a great job breaking him down. I go in depth on a film piece I put together of him this past week. A guy that brings a lot of versatility as well. Plays in the backfield at times. TCU did a lot with him, and he was targeted a ton. I want to say 92 targets this past year. Only had 55 catchable passes, so he didn't really have a good quarterback, but he didn't do himself any favors either. He dropped 9 passes this past year. Eric Turner told us that he had dropped 19 over 3 years as well. So, I mean, he's got to make sure he's catching the football. But either way, I like the fit. I think it could be a potential landing spot. I have them going offense as well, but this time on the offensive line. And I'm going Austin Jackson out of USC. This is one of our guys. We've been pounding the table for him. I wrote about him back in November, saying that he's got first-round talent. I think he's generated some first-round buzz, certainly some top 50, top 75 buzz. So I have him going here. They need a left tackle. He doesn't have to play right away either. Dwayne Brown is still there, but he's 34 years of age, and I just don't know how much more he's got left in the tank. And regardless, you get a guy that loves the hand trap technique, and I think that's what Jackson brings to the table. Kind of similar to Andre Dillard, not as clean of a footwork type of guy, but he could come in and with some consistent hand placement, a smooth kick slide. I think he could be a plug-and-play guy if needed. But for the future, you've got your future blindside protector for Russell Wilson. So I really like the fit for Austin Jackson to Seattle. We've got Baltimore at 28, a team that might be just one, maybe two pieces away from really making a run and being a consistent team every year for the Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson at the helm. But we've got them going defense here. You've got Yetur Gross-Matos out of Penn State, the edge rusher that I had previously going to the Bills. So he's off my board, but he's available here. What do you like about him to Baltimore?
They need some extra pass rusher, or they need a primary pass rusher. Even though, we talked about Baltimore's defense being pretty consistent over the course of the season, they ranked 21st in the league in sacks with 37. So, of course they lose, Zadarius Smith a couple years ago, or this was their first year without him. And so there's some pieces that need to be mended up front. And I know you'll talk a little bit about Matt Judon is kind of serving as a pass rusher too with your selection. But I think Gross-Matos, like you said, is a guy he's added a little more to his repertoire as far as rush defense goes. And I think, seeing improvement over the course of the season as far as pass rushing skill set goes, that brings a lot of upside to his game. I think he's, ascending as an overall player from a technique perspective, and he has the production to match up. I know there's a couple of weird off the field things that are going on with him right now. I'm sure we'll get the full story possibly when the combine comes around here in a couple weeks. So maybe we can get a better gauge on where he's going to fall or where he's going to go in the draft. But I think Gross-Matos makes a lot of sense here for Baltimore just based on their need and possibly best player available in this situation.
Yeah, I was going to elaborate. If Matt Judon leaves, I think edge rusher is certainly their top need, but I like linebacker for them, and Kenneth Murray's available out of Oklahoma, 6'2", 243. I think he brings some versatility. You can plug him in the middle. You can rush him off the edge. Kind of has that athletic build to him, like Tremaine Edmonds for the Buffalo Bills. So I think with his range, his athletic ability, he could be a really good fit here, and I think he'd develop nicely in Baltimore. Murray does leave his feet at times when tackling. I think he more so moves his head down some, which makes him miss in some of the short areas of the field. But overall, he's a very consistent player, I think, and he's been a productive player as well. I think he's had in 3 years, 335 tackles at Oklahoma, if I remember correctly. So he is a productive player. He'd be a great fit for Baltimore. At 29, the Tennessee Titans, your team, this is we've talked about it multiple times. This is kind of a toss-up as well because they could go in a variety of ways. I like them going defense. I like a cornerback for them. Trevon Diggs is available for me, so that's what I have them taking. If Derrick Henry ends up going elsewhere, then I think running back is the pick. That's my opinion. But with Logan Ryan set to hit free agency, I think a corner makes a lot of sense, and Diggs with his length and his knowledge in zone coverage is pretty good. So at 6'2", 207, I think he's a pretty good football player and would be a fit in Tennessee. What do you like about Josh Jones, offensive tackle out of Houston? This has kind of been a guy you've been on since really the start of the year. You talked about him, and here we are. We've both got him in the first round.
Yeah, scheme-wise, I don't know if he necessarily fits Tennessee's style of play just based on their identity. We saw with, especially in that second half of the season for Tennessee, it was a downhill man-blocking scheme, hit the guy in the mouth in front of you, go for it. Not saying Josh Jones can't do that, but he, at Houston, he plays in a very heavy zone blocking scheme, a lot of movement, a lot of second-level plays. Not saying he won't be able to feature that in Tennessee's offense, but maybe not comfortably, at least in the first couple seasons, or maybe just the first season itself. But I think Josh Jones, Jack Conklin's not going to be re-signed. Tennessee did not pick up his option. He's had some injury-riddled type career so far. Taylor Lewan's been fine. I think he could maybe tone back some of the penalties, but that's a conversation for another day. Josh Jones, and I know he played primarily at left tackle for Houston, but he brings a lot of physical attributes to this Tennessee offensive line, and I think just his ability to really just, go forward with his overall ability. And I know that sounds redundant to say, but with his physical strength, his ability to move and, maybe kind of play a little bit of that swing tackle role too, maybe early in his career. Josh Jones brings an element that I think Tennessee lacks and definitely needs. Sure, they could go for more of a true right tackle in this class, but I think Josh Jones is too much of a good player to really let go at this point late in the draft. But I'm definitely with you as far as Diggs goes as well. Logan Ryan was okay this year, but he's not going to be re-signed. Adoree Jackson, I think, took a big step forward, so he can be that primary cornerback number one. If not, they can maybe piece together a bunch of number two corners like they have recently. They found a little success there. But the big question is, if Derrick Henry does walk from Tennessee, do we see, Jonathan Taylor? Do we see J.K. Dobbins? Do we see DeAndre Swift, which schematically is probably the best fit for Tennessee? So there's a lot of questions here with Tennessee where I'm sure there's so many different mock draft picks here at 29. But we'll see. Maybe some news comes out about the combine as far as contract situations go. We'll get a better gauge on what Tennessee does at 29.
For sure. And another team as well, when we get to contracts and what they're going to do, we'll really get an understanding. And I mean, I think the three teams that are always super tough to figure out in the draft are the Saints, the Patriots, and the Packers. I don't know what it is. It's just you think they're doing one thing and they do something completely different. And that would be Green Bay here. We both think they're going to go wide receiver, which means they're both, they're actually going to go with a linebacker or a kicker or something crazy. But we like the idea of a wide receiver. I've got them going Van Jefferson out of Florida. Somebody had commented on this mock draft and said there's no way in hell that Van Jefferson goes in the first round. Well, we actually don't know that. And every time you get beyond like the top 20, and even in the top 20, there's always surprise picks. And I think Van Jefferson's a guy that, Senior Bowl, sure. I had him in my top 50, but overall, I think he's a guy that could fall into this first round simply because of that Senior Bowl week or an early day 2 pick at best or at worst case scenario. And I just think this is a fit. You need a guy that's developed that can help you win now. You have a window with Aaron Rodgers. That window is starting to close. Every single year, that window gets closer to being completely shut. And with Rodgers there, you can win, but you need to have some competent receivers. And no offense to Allen Lazard, he did a great job this year. But like we talked about with Arcega-Whiteside for Philadelphia, Lazard's more of a wide receiver 3, and you can play him on the outside or you could plug him in the slot. But a guy that fits naturally in the slot and kind of could do that Randall Cobb type of role could be Van Jefferson. His ability in the short areas of the field, his ability to attack the middle of the field, and what he brings in the red zone is fantastic. So I think he complements Devontae Adams very well. You would get him for 5 years. Yeah, from 24 to 29, the window, whatever there is for Rodgers, you have. And if the window closes and your team's not very good, maybe you can piece something together and trade a guy like Van Jefferson down the line and get some picks for him. But regardless, you need to get something on offense. So I like Jefferson. Who do you have the Packers taking?
Yeah, I went in the same direction for all the reasons you just gave. Allen Lazard is, like you said, maybe the ceiling of a wide receiver 3. Not bad. Was second on the team as far as yards go, but 5th in receptions, falling behind some running backs and tight ends. So they need to accentuate that wide receiver core. Obviously, Devontae Adams may be the most productive receiver outside of Michael Thomas over the past 3 seasons. But
sure,
I got going Brandon Ayuk, the wide receiver from Arizona State. Gives a little bit of kind of what you're talking about, Van Jefferson. Jefferson's more of a smooth route runner overall. I think he's a little more versatile as far as, like you said, getting down the field into the red zone. But Ayuk can test you vertically. Is really good when the ball's in his hands. I think he's one of the better players. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I feel pretty confident of saying yards after the catch, he's probably at the top. One of the players at the top as far as wide receivers go in this class. Just another wide receiver that can bring a little bit of kind of everything in a certain sense. But I know he had some injuries at the Senior Bowl. Was really looking forward to seeing Ayuk participate, especially given the praise that Nagy was giving him, saying that, he's talked to some teams that had Ayuk higher on their board than they did N'Keal Harry a year ago, and you saw where N'Keal Harry fell for the New England Patriots in round 1. Though then again, that is the Patriots. They could have jumped the gun so far on Harry. We don't know. and then he spent the majority of the year on the IR. But with Ayuk, like you said, gives them maybe a wide receiver type capability. I think they need to go wide receiver here too. And to the guy that said there's no way that Jefferson can go in round one, watch the draft, because that's I mean, come on, that happens every year. And it's not to say Jefferson's not a wide receiver that cannot be taken in round one. He has the skill set for all the reasons you detailed. So yeah, I wouldn't throw it out of the realm of possibilities, because especially too, like you said, some of the most unpredictable team, that list includes the Green Bay Packers. So they got a receiver that they like that doesn't think they, would last till their second pick, then go get them. That could be Van Jefferson. That could be Brandon Ayuk.
For sure. Let's go 31-32. I'm just going to go back to back here. We've talked about the 49ers and the Chiefs. We talked about them after the Super Bowl and just how we think the next 3 to 5 years, we could see them quite a bit in the playoffs, but we could also see them in the Super Bowl some more. So the 49ers, I like them going defense here. CJ Henderson, out of Florida is my corner that's on the board, and I think he does a really good job replacing a guy like Richard Sherman, who's on his contract's expired, is 34. Is he going to come back? Who knows? But Henderson's got really good footwork. I think he's a natural athlete, and at 6'1", 202, I think he's a fit for what San Francisco needs in their secondary. And then the Super Bowl champs, Kansas City Chiefs at 32. People are going to hate it. I really don't give a damn. I'm going Tyler Biadasz, center out of Wisconsin. I think this guy's –
But Russ, he's not good.
Bull, you know what? He is good. And, yeah, he might not be the most powerful interior offensive lineman, and he's not a top 15 guy like we thought going into the year. But this guy's still a top 50 pick. And anybody that's got him ranked outside of that, you are effing high. This guy can play football, and he plays pretty damn well. And there's times, certainly, body control can get a little out of whack. The weight distribution can be a little off, and there's times that he's just not the strongest guy on the field. But at this level, you need a competent center, and that's a trend that's been happening in the National Football League. We've seen plenty of centers taken in the first round the last couple of years, and that doesn't mean that these teams are correct for doing it, but there's the reason why they're doing it. Young quarterbacks, you want to develop your offensive line. You need a leader up front. You look at, Billy Price for the Bengals, not working out right now because of injuries, but he was a first-round pick. Frank Ragnow, first-round pick. You've got Ryan Kelly for the Colts, first-round pick. We're seeing it every single year. Garrett Bradbury last year, first-round pick. Tyler Biadasz has the caliber to be a first-round pick. So I think he's a solid interior offensive lineman. I think he operates well in space. As a pulling center, a guy that's going to snap and then pull, that's a very tough thing to do, and he does it pretty damn well. So I like him here. I think he fits this team in Kansas City. He would be a guy that's going to be 8-year pro, and he's going to be solid, never going to miss a game. And that's exactly what he did at Wisconsin. He's got over 30 career starts, or I think 41 career games if I'm not mistaken. So this is a guy that's got plenty of experience, and he just fits what Kansas City needs, I think, as an interior offensive lineman. So I'll let you do 31-32. We'll wrap this up, and we'll enjoy our Saturday.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with what you said. And for the record, I was joking when I said he's not good. I know you know that. But to the listeners, I just want to make sure I never said he was a bad football player, because I agree with you. He's a top 30 player in my opinion as well. With 31, I went to San Francisco. Best player on the board. It fits a need. Grant Delpit falling all the way to pick 31. And I know so many people are going to be ticked off if San Francisco gets another higher-end type defensive player. But this fills a need. They have to answer Jimmy Ward's contract situation, who's an okay player, but maybe not that player that they envisioned. I think it was first-round pick, 3 or 4 years ago. But Grant Delpit, I think he could bring maybe a little more versatility. Just seeing, John Lynch, former safety, what he would do with him. Even though, he may not have complete control over that. But I think, with the selection, of course he does. I think Delpit would fit a situation and where San Francisco could really let him answer, let him get to that potential of him being that all-star safety that we once envisioned maybe entering the season. They didn't really match. Of course, he has to clean up some things technically, especially as far as finishing and overall tackling, maybe shedding some blocks as well. But I think San Francisco would be the right fit. There's enough pieces around him for him to kind of mature in that defense and maybe reach that potential we all know that is there. At 32, Kansas City, I went kind of in the same realm that you were talking about, as just kind of, maybe solidifying, some of that up front, not the flashy type ability, but I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins. Maybe I like your Tyler Biadasz pick, or just addressing that front offensive front, because I think that's where they maybe have the most question marks going forward, because it seems like every year Kansas City churns out this running back. I don't want to say they're necessarily this factory, because they're average to good running backs, but maybe if you can get your option as the top running back in the league or in this draft, I think J.K. Dobbins would be a good fit. Runs that heavy zone scheme like Ohio State did. Kansas City does the same thing. Brings a lot in the receiving game overall, which we definitely know Kansas City loves to run a lot of those, flats to running backs, or, maybe run a little bit of angle routes or screen routes with the running back. So I think Dobbins could be on the field for all three downs, and gives kind of maybe a little bit more of a spark, if I'm allowed to say that, to Kansas City's offense, because Dobbins has that home run ability. He has that consistent overall ability. He can win in the tackles. He can win outside. He can win in the receiving game. So Dobbins is almost your premier, your prototypical Kansas City back, but he brings a lot more elements, a lot more attributes than what they're used to. So I think he would be a perfect fit for Kansas City here at 32.
I almost went J.K. Dobbins. I can't disagree. I love the fit there. I think it's an actual strong landing spot. I would not be surprised by any means if that's the direction that they go. But again, I think we hit a home run with this mock draft. I don't care what anybody says. Not many disagreements. Not many different picks. We win a lot of the same sides of the football, a lot of the same positions, sometimes the same player even. It's going to be a lot of fun. I actually want people to reach out to us on Twitter at Russ NFL Draft, at _Christian page, or on Spreaker.com, on Apple Pods. Hit the comment section and let us know what you thought about these mock draft episodes. I mean, they're long, they're lengthy. We go into a little bit deeper detail, but we do that so we don't have to do it in 3,000-page mock draft form. We could do it here, have a little bit of fun, and just give you a brief description on the mock draft. So give us your thoughts on Spreaker.com, on Apple Podcast, on Twitter. Smash the follow buttons. Again, at Russ NFL Draft, at _Christian page. Search Cover One on your podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We are on everything. YouTube, like I said, Apple Podcasts, everything. Just find us on there, Cover One NFL Draft Podcast. Search us, download us, subscribe to us, rate, review, all the goods. Be sure to get Cover One premium content by becoming a premium subscriber, and be sure to download the Cover One app. It's free, so search Cover One in your app store, download it today, and you'll have fresh content every single day leading all the way up to the draft, through the draft, and 24/7, 365 football content. So, CP, thank you for joining me as always on a Saturday show. We will get this out probably momentarily, and then you have a great weekend. You all out there have a great weekend. Be safe, and until next week, this is Cover One, the Draft Podcast.